Welcome back to Hand in Hand, Place to Place, Transforming Teacher Preparation. I'm Valerie Sakimura, your podcast host and the Executive Director of Deans for Impact, a national nonprofit with a mission of ensuring all students access well-prepared teachers. Our 5-episode podcast series will examine how teacher preparation has evolved over the last decade, where it's headed, and how stakeholders can work together to ensure all pathways into teaching are affordable and high quality. Back in 2015, we launched Deans for Impact with a coalition of deans who were really fired up about challenging the status quo in teacher preparation and working together to strengthen preparation quality. While our organization has expanded since to work with leaders of all different pathways into teaching, as well as teacher educators and policymakers, our work with leaders continues to play a critical role in our mission to ensure all students are taught by well-prepared teachers. And that is why I am so excited to have this conversation today with some of the incredible leaders we've partnered with over the years. Today, I'm joined by Sara DeLano of Dallas College in Texas, Ellen McIntyre of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Carolyn Theard-Griggs of National Louis University in Chicago, Illinois. Sara, Ellen, and Carolyn lead teacher preparation programs in very different geographic and institutional contexts, and DFI has worked closely with each of them, from instructional programming to advocacy to coaching other leaders. I am so excited to have the three of you here. I think we're going to have a fantastic time. And to get us started, can you each say hello to our listeners and share a brief overview of your programs? Sara, why don't we start with you?
Hi, thanks so much, Val. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and Carolyn and Ellen. I have so much respect for all of you. As Val mentioned, my name is Sara DeLano, and I have the pleasure of serving as the leader for a large teacher preparation program that is situated within a community college. And so this is the first community college bachelor's degree teacher preparation program in Texas, very new. We started in 2021, and we now have almost 2,000 aspiring educators somewhere in our pathway.
I'm Ellen McIntyre, and I'm the Dean of the College of Education, Health, and Human Sciences at the University of Tennessee. And we have a large program as well. We currently produce about 300 new teachers annually in a wide variety of pathways. We have the traditional undergraduate programs. We have a graduate or 5th year program for our candidates who get a degree in another area. We have job embedded programs, and those pay a salary while you earn your teaching credentials. We also have an online competency-based program for endorsements in special education or mathematics teaching, and we're working on ESL. And our idea is to create a pathway for everyone who wants to become a teacher and has the credentials to become a teacher, no matter what their current work or life situation might be. And thanks for having me, Val. It's really fun to do this.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you both, Ellen and Sara, and of course, Valerie. And hello to everyone that's listening. I am Carolyn Theard-Griggs. I'm the Dean of the National College of Education. Really happy to be here and part of this conversation. My college serves all graduate students and in the various areas of teacher preparation, principal preparation, superintendent preparation, and school psychologists. And we offer our programs in every modality you can imagine. We have alternative certification, we have residency programs, we have kind of traditional programs. But similarly to Ellen, our goal is to make sure that we have something that fits for everyone who is interested in being an educator. And we serve around 3,000 students annually.
Well, I want to say to our listeners, you are all in for a treat. I have been looking forward to this conversation for the last couple of weeks, seeing it on my calendar. And even in some of our preparation conversations for this recording, these women have so much wisdom and have led such incredible work. I'm really excited to be in conversation with the three of you today. Ellen, I'm going to start us back from the beginning of DFI back in 2015, and you were with us. And yes. I remember how excited you were about the idea of supporting other leaders in this field. And in fact, you helped us design and launch our Impact Academy Fellowship, which is a year of leadership programming for teacher prep leaders, really focused on improving the quality of preparation. And you even hosted the very first cohort of that fellowship at the institution you led at the time, UNC Charlotte. And, because we were in startup mode and doing this for the first time, you even offered to become licensed to drive a UNC Charlotte bus in case we needed a way to get leaders from place to place, which I deeply appreciate. We did not end up having you do that, but I appreciated the offer.
Not the bus story. I was worried you would start off with the bus story. Wow. I mean, we needed transportation, right?
We did.
And I had driven a bus before.
We did. It feels like a long time ago. So help us kind of get back to that point in time. Do you remember some of the topics that leaders were grappling with back in 2015?
Well, yes, it does seem like a long time ago, but 10 years isn't really that long. But a few things come to mind. First of all, I know that we were arguing over practice-based teacher education. And I recall back then, Deborah Ball and Francesca Forzani had a series of articles, mostly of them published in the Journal of Teacher Education, around this topic of practice-based teacher education. And even one of the articles was calling for bringing back the word training for some aspects of teacher education. So there was conversations around the relative balance between theory and practice in our programs. And it was just a little controversial back then. I think we're in a little bit better place today.
I hope so.
Yeah. We were also talking a lot about clinical work and how to do that. We're still talking about that, but sort of how to meet our school partners' needs by placing teachers in the schools, but also how to get on the same page with school partners. And so that work was a big effort back then and continues to be. And let's see, also, of course, data. We were all collecting lots of data at the time for accreditation and other purposes. But the big question was, how do we really use that data to make important improvements in our preparation programs? So I'd say those were three big areas.
So interesting to hear, because some of those still feel like big topics of conversation, and some like, this argument over practice-based teacher preparation. I feel like we've kind of hopefully land on some agreement around that. So that was our very first cohort. It feels crazy to share that we recently announced the 10th cohort of that fellowship. And Sara and Carolyn, you've both been fellows through this Impact Academy Fellowship program and are both now coaches, meaning that you provide one-on-one mentorship and support to a small group of the fellows within the larger cohort. I'm curious for the two of you, what was the reason that each of you decided to initially join the Impact Academy Fellowship?
I distinctively remember this. I was part of a professional learning community of a couple of deans, and two of them were fellows. And I remember coming to these meetings with them, I don't know, maybe once a quarter, and it being like life breathing for me, just to connect with other deans. And both of them mentioned to me, they told me a little bit about Deans for Impact and Impact Academy, and they both said, I think you'd benefit greatly from this. And I just remember thinking this could be the lifeline that I've been looking for, just because being a new dean, is just so hard. You have no idea what you're getting into. And the idea that there would be a larger group of deans that I could connect with and talk through big challenges that you're facing in that role was just incredible to me. So I jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah, Carolyn, it's very similar for me as well. So my first foray into being a leader of a teacher preparation program was fun. So I joined Impact Academy in 2022. It was about, a year in when I realized I didn't really know what I was doing. I needed some help and support and thought partnership. And so I joined the Impact Academy, and it's just as you're saying, really special to be in a place with other leaders who are going through something that's very similar and challenging and have the opportunity to collaborate and just be in community with one another. So it was a very impactful experience for
And you
sure.
learn along the way that lots of people have that same view, right, Sarah, that we all sort of were hiding, that we didn't really know how to lead in this way. And then you learn that we have that most deans feel that way at some point or another.
Well, and I appreciate all of you then taking what you learned from that fellowship and turning around and kind of paying it forward to other leaders who needed that same sort of support as coaches in this effort. Ellen, I was thinking about walking into this beautiful space that you hosted us at UNC Charlotte, and there was this buzz of excitement in the room with our first cohort, people so excited to be there. And there was this one fellow who was sitting there with his arms crossed, leaning all the way back in his chair, as skeptical as could be about this endeavor and what we were trying to do. And I think particularly because we start this fellowship really asking leaders to look internally, to examine their values and identities and how those intersect with their leadership. And I think that level of vulnerability that's required to do that is really different from how leaders often show up in spaces with each other in this field. But slowly over the course of the 4 days we were together, I saw his posture start to change where, every day we would say, oh, he's leaning a little bit more forward. He's, his arms have uncrossed today. So by the end of, the 4 days, I think he was all in. And he came up to me afterwards and said, I have been involved in so many of these efforts, and there is something really special that you have here. And I think it's because you're asking us to do this looking inward about who we are as people and as leaders. And so I'm really curious for the three of you to reflect on what is a value or aspect of your leadership identity that the fellowship helped to surface or reinforce for you that you've continued to build on or lean into over the years. And Ellen, I'll start with you.
I'm glad to take this because you certainly created the context for this, bringing me back to those days at the Charlotte first DFI. Now, I'm not sure if this is really so much about my identity, although maybe it is, but I know that work that we did in the early years, all the way up for 10 years, DFI's always centered kids in K-12 schools first. And so much of our conversation was about what is best for kids. And so much of the work was around best pedagogical practices for rigorous teaching, the kind of teaching that pushes kids in strategic and empathetic ways. And, I was always struck by the pedagogy that you employed with us, Val, you and the other leaders of DFI, what you led us through was some really excellent pedagogy. And it's the kind of pedagogy we were striving for in our EPPs and in K-12 schools. And so really, I guess if you're going to relate it to identity, it would be myself as a pedagogue. I mean, I really believe in the power of really strategic pedagogy. And I learned a lot of that from DFI and have continued to hone that work in my leadership.
Carolyn, what about for you?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that was surfaced early for me when I was in Impact Academy was this idea of how important being family focused is to me as a person and how that shows up in my work as a dean and as a leader. And the opportunity for me to be transparent and how important family is really helped me to understand why I approach the space of being a dean, like in terms of a family. So my college, my colleagues, my leadership team, my faculty all feel very much like a family. And there are moments and times where I have felt like that was not okay, that I just have to be the leader and I have to be dogmatic and I have to manage. And early in Impact Academy, I had opportunities to really think about why that's important to me and why connection and relationship and collaboration that shows up in family is also important in a college of education. And I think there was a moment where that really transformed the way that I view myself as a leader, but then also what I'm looking for in my faculty and opportunities for them to show up as themselves and to answer hard questions and to push back on one another. And so that became a theme for me across, even as I've been coaching, but even within other areas of Impact Academy, just how important relationship is and relationship building within my personhood, but then also my leadership.
I want to be in your college, Carol.
What I'm thinking about is interesting, Ellen, you were talking about your identity as a pedagogue, and Carolyn talking about what it means to really think about your work in the context of being family oriented and how you bring that to your profession. And what I'm thinking about and what really came up for me in Impact Academy is, what are the enabling conditions that need to be there in order for you to even teach anyone? And it's about the relationship. And in order to have those relationships, you need to develop a space that welcomes all parts of a person's identity. And I think for me, what I was thinking a lot about in Impact Academy was my identity as a person with a disability. So I'm a congenital amputee. And there were so many times during my own educational career where I didn't feel that that part of my identity was welcomed, that it was a burden, it was something to be embarrassed about. And so when I was in Impact Academy, I was really thinking a lot about how much it matters for you to be able to bring your full self to the table. And that if I lean into that identity and talk about that with my team and faculty members and our students, it helps to foster this really welcoming place where everybody can bring their full selves to the fore, and it really supports in having those vulnerable conversations that you're talking about, Ellen, and that you are talking about, Carolyn, in terms of feeling like a family.
It's beautifully said.
I love that so much, Sarah. And one of the things that makes me think about is there are two questions that I tell my faculty I think about all the time in my process of reflection. Why am I here? And do I still want to be here? And I talk through that with my faculty all the time because I want them to know that I'm a person and that I'm experiencing all of this work just like they are. And to your point, Sarah, I want them to do the same for me. I want to hear the stories of how this connects to the work they're doing, and what is your why? Like why are you showing up here day after day after day, even when it's difficult? And I think if you can set that tone, it just makes so much more of a difference for faculty. It becomes a space where we can think creatively and strategically and enjoy one another and enjoy this work.
Yeah, I thought for a long time in leadership that I shouldn't show doubt. And I think, and of course, we doubt all the time, right?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
it is important to show it, and people will respond differently, more positively, more welcoming, if you are able to show at times that you don't really know, that you do doubt, and is this the right move, and so on.
Yeah.
You know, what is standing out to me and what you all are saying is that it's okay for leaders to be human, right? We are human, and it is okay to be human. And I am going to sit with that because we're in a time where there is tremendous pressure on leaders to have the answer, to know how to show up. And I think what you just said, Ellen, about it is okay to show doubt is a message that I'm just going to take away for myself from this conversation. So thank you for that. So we have served almost 200 EPP leaders through Impact Academy and are still partnering with many of them as alumni of that program. And we've just released a leadership report which highlights, based on some of our learnings through this effort, the top 3 things that we think all leaders of EPP should excel at and prioritize. So instructional improvement, strategic change management, and advocacy. I'd love to hear from each of you how you have found these three pillars of leadership to be anchors through your work and help you to kind of articulate a path forward, especially in times of ambiguity or challenge. And Sara, I'll start with you first.
Yeah, I think about these three pillars actually sort of sequentially. And I think the reason for that is because I became a leader for our program when we didn't really have a program yet. So I had the pleasure of building it. And so the first thing that we did when we were building was to say, what are the four things that we have to get right for our students? So there were four things that we laid out in terms of instructional excellence that we had to focus on in the very beginning. And this was about offering the very best skills-based coursework, about having a paid clinical experience at the end of the program that would provide high quality mentorship and coaching. And then we also thought a lot about how are we going to help our students to persist. And so we put all of our efforts there in like this instructional excellence bucket at the beginning. And once we had built this strong foundation and we had a program that we were having really good success with, most of our students are paraprofessionals. At the beginning, most of them were paraprofessionals or teaching assistants. And then a few years in, as our program was growing, we ran into this place where now many of our students aren't working in school system settings. And so this last year, my team supported 150 of our students to find jobs in school systems as part of the program. And that was a huge change management effort in terms of working with partners to get these positions up and running and to get students placed in them. And that's not something we expected at all. And then that goes into the next thing around advocacy, because as our program has grown, what we have seen is that the residency component of our program is incredibly powerful in terms of building the skills that aspiring educators need to be effective. And for our students, they have to be paid to do this residency. They can't do it for free. We don't have enough paid residencies in Texas. And so the legislature was considering during this last legislative session to make a historic investment in paid residencies, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I got to the table at the Texas Senate Education Committee and told them how much this mattered and that we needed to invest in teacher preparation. And I'm super the bill passed. So
it's amazing.
And it wasn't just me, right? There were many, many, many people at the table, and it is so wonderful to see just how much I think people are understanding now in a way that maybe they didn't before. Just how we need to invest in teacher preparation. And so it was really amazing to see.
It's like a story of all three of these pillars, Sara. I get maybe you intended it to be, but the advocacy and leadership, that you're using strategic change management for instructional improvement. I mean, that's a great story. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, those pillars are, I think, intentionally interwoven, and I think we should think of them that way. And I love the way that you talked about them, Sara. I think when I think about myself as a leader, I do find that I prioritize one of those areas more over the other, depending on what's happening. And I think now that we're in this really, really challenging time in public education, I think the pillar that I hold on to more than ever now is being really strategic and strategic agility and thinking about who we need to be and what we need to do moving forward. And the thing that I've told my faculty is this next academic year, that really is going to be our focus. What is it that we need to do in this space to ensure that we continue to do the work that we know has to happen? And I think in thinking about that, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what partnership means and what it means to be a true partner in the K-12 spaces. And so what does it mean to think about the trajectory of a person from pre-K to higher ed? And how do we strategize with our partners in a way where we are all at the same table and that we're leveraging the strength of all the stakeholders? I have 4 kids, and when I've started this work and at different points in my work, I've always thought of them as my advisors. They'll say to me, "Mom, you've got to do better. This is not working, and let me tell
I
you
love
what's not
that.
working." And I like they're invested in it too, and they're the type of kids that are like, "I get that this isn't going to be different for me, but this better be different for the people that come after me." And I take that really, really, really seriously. And, they're in college and graduating from college. And so I think the ability to strategize and have strategic agility is so critical at this particular time.
Carolyn, that reminds me of when I was a young professor, a friend had a child in school who was struggling. And she said to me, looked at me very hard and said, "What you do is really serious work." And it really affected me forever. I thought it is really serious work. So I love that your 4 kids know that and
Oh, yeah.
are pushing you to do this very serious work. Yeah. I think about these pillars a lot, Val. And by the way, listeners, if you can get a hold of the report, it's worth a read. It's an outstanding report. And I do like you, Carolyn, see them as really interwoven. Certainly, you really can't make instructional improvement without strategic change management. But I also think that what some leaders find most difficult of these 3 always depends on their context, because some leaders find themselves in institutions that have been historically resistant to change. And so that makes change making really, really challenging. For me, I think I'm so focused on instructional improvement. And one of the things that I lean in on as a leader is I try to get as close to the teacher candidates in the program as I can. Like at Charlotte, I was able to observe some classes. I also interviewed in groups of 20 every teacher candidate. There were 300 of them, and asked basically the big overall question was, what has most helped you learn how to teach? And because, well, teacher candidates often know what they need. They knew what they needed. They knew what they weren't getting. And here at Tennessee, I observe teacher candidates every fall. I just go out there and see what it is they're doing. How do they practice? And what I learned from the candidates is what teaches me most, I think, about our EPPs. But also I have to admit that I've gotten some things wrong too. You can't make assumptions just listening to candidates, right? You have to double back and talk to your colleagues and say, this is what I've seen, or this is what I've heard. And how does that square with what's really going on? And so sometimes I get it wrong, and squaring that is really important, obvious. But yeah, I mean, thanks for asking that question. It's a good one.
Ellen, the way you describe getting close to teacher candidates and talking to all of those teacher candidates and going out and observing teacher candidates, I don't think that is common practice among leaders of teacher preparation programs, in part because I think for many, they may not see their role as a leader of instructional improvement. And kind of on the advocacy side too, some leaders don't view their role as advocates. They view their role as kind of internal to their unit and their programs and their faculty. And so I think one thing I heard you say, Carolyn, is knowing how to pull or lean on one of these more than the others, given what is happening and what you're trying to accomplish and push forward, and being able to be fluent across those 3 pillars is really important. And I think I know you all have coached other leaders in this work to help them kind of push beyond what they're most comfortable sitting in terms of those 3 pillars, and think about what does the moment demand of you as a leader, and how can you lean into one or the other at different times. Carolyn, you also named this current moment. So let's talk about this current moment. There are a lot of uncertainties, changes happening from federal and state funding, um, big shift in what is possible with technology, with kind of the rapid acceleration of AI. I'm curious what is top of mind for you currently as a leader as you look out at all these uncertainties and challenges in the field?
I do think that this is a huge opportunity. And I felt this way after COVID as well. And I have felt this at different points in my career, but as frustrated as I am at times with the current state of things in this country, I also feel like as educators, this is our opportunity to collaborate more than we ever have in trying to answer some questions about how do we do this well and
Yeah.
how do we get this right for kids. And I think even if you think about the colleagues in your own state, like eliminating this notion that we're competing for candidates, but that we're really trying to figure out how to uplift the field of education and so that
Yes.
we can create equitable spaces and make sure that we're serving all students well. So I do see this as an opportunity because it's forcing us to have some hard conversations about who we really are and what is really important to us.
Mm.
I've told my faculty that we need to dig deep and it's time for us to really think about what matters most and to engage our superintendents, principals, academic leaders out in the field and have them to come in and say, what are you seeing? What are you needing? What are we missing? And to be able to make changes in real time. As difficult as that sounds, I think that's what's going to be necessary now more than ever. When it comes to technology, I've got lots to say about that. I mentioned my kids. I have a son that'll be graduating from Stanford in 1 week, so I'm really excited.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yes.
He's a computer science major, and we talk about this all the time. He loves Silicon Valley, and he like consumes all of the latest, greatest research that is out there on artificial intelligence. He has a minor in artificial intelligence too. And I really think we are in the midst of a really exciting technological revolution. But if we've ever seen gaps and if ever we've been worried about gaps, we're about to see the greatest gaps ever if we don't
Mhm.
double down and really learn how to leverage artificial intelligence in a meaningful way for teachers, for teacher preparation, for superintendents, for principals, school psychologists, for parents, families, children. I worry, this is something that I worry about more than anything else, is that we will not be able to move quickly enough. Higher ed has been notorious
Mhm.
for moving at a turtle's pace. And I think in a lot of ways it's because we want to be intentional, but I don't think we have that amount of time. We don't have that long runway anymore. And we have this golden opportunity to be able to leverage a tool that could potentially really revolutionize the way that we think about differentiated instruction, personalized
Mhm.
learning. And I'm worried that we won't jump on and do it immediately and as fast as we possibly can. And then at the same time, I'm excited about the ability for us to do this. So I think there is this moment where we really can see change and we can affect change rapidly. So I'm looking forward to that.
But we have to partner with the right people to do it. I mean,
Have to.
there's
Yep.
so many concerns about the wrong people
Yeah.
deciding they're going to use AI in education in ways
Yeah.
that are really problematic. And
Yeah.
so it is a really important time for us. The partners are going to absolutely be critical, and the engineers who, and your son might be one of them, has to learn a little bit about education. We don't want them to just go
Absolutely.
in and decide how things ought to be based on how they were taught in fourth grade, right? So
Right.
it's a tough, it's a tough time, but I'm with you, Carolyn. It's also a really exciting time.
One of my very good friends is a high school teacher in Philadelphia, and we were just talking about this week in terms of like, how does she see her students using AI? How do I see this for our students at Dallas College? And what I wonder about and am concerned about, sort of to your point, Ellen, like there's one piece around who is figuring out how it should be used. There's another piece around how are we supporting our students to use it in a way that is not detrimental to their own learning. Because what my good friend is seeing and what I'm seeing as well is that our students are outsourcing the mental labor with using AI. And so they're not actually using it as a tool to support their own learning and development so much as a way to get an assignment done more quickly. And that is something, a danger that I think, to your point, Carolyn, like we need to be proactive in getting in front of that.
Well said, Sarah. And I do think I think that's going to cause us to think about what types of assignments we're offering and what types of questions we're asking. And are we asking the right questions? Are we asking students to engage in the most meaningful type of work? Or are we relying on what we have known has worked in the past?
Yeah, like designing a lesson plan. Do we really need to do what we were doing in the 1970s? No.
We don't.
We don't need to be doing that.
You know what I love about hearing the three of you go back and forth on this issue is, Carolyn, you're right. Things are moving so quickly. We are going to need to be able to engage and grapple with some of these really hard questions. And I hear the three of you centering instruction. I hear the three of you thinking about the change management piece, like how are we going to bring people along in this journey? And I think there's some like advocacy pieces in here as well around how do we make sure that there are the right safeguards and protections and opportunities in place in order to best take advantage of emerging technologies in ways that are good for kids. And so I feel like we could spend a whole 2 hours, another 2 hours talking just about this topic. And I think the thing that I'm taking away is just we need leaders who are able to think really critically about the opportunities and ways to take advantage of those opportunities that are good for kids. I know we are almost out of time. So I want to end with this last question, which is one that I am asking at the end of every podcast episode. You know, by the time this episode is out, we'll be at our annual leadership convening in Washington, D.C., and we'll be celebrating a decade of impact and also using that opportunity to do some advocacy on the Hill. As you all reflect on the last decade, I would love to hear you talk about, in your mind, the single most important way you think the field of teacher preparation has made progress since 2015. Because I think sometimes I hear a narrative that teacher prep hasn't improved over the last decade, which I don't think is true. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, what is the way the field has made progress over the last decade? And then as you look forward to the next decade, what is most important for us to be paying attention to as a field as we continue to work to improve how teachers are prepared over the next 10 years?
Love that question. I think one is really obvious, and that's early literacy instruction, is the change toward the science of reading or evidence-based literacy instruction, whatever you may call it. We are there, and it is really exciting to see it all over the country. Are we there yet in terms of every teacher educator really knowing how to prepare teachers most effectively in this way? Maybe not yet, but that movement is a huge success story, and we have a lot of people to thank who got that whole movement started. So I think that's a really easy one.
And what about looking ahead to the next 10 years?
Oh, looking ahead. Well, of course, certainly the use of AI in our for how people learn, learning how people learn through AI, learning how to use the tools to more effectively get kids to read and everything else. So I'm looking ahead with both excitement and concern.
I'm kind of the newbie here. So I've been a leader in a teacher prep program for almost four years, actually, exactly last week. But
congratulations, that's a milestone.
Yeah, that's a milestone. Before that, I worked at a state education agency during a time when we were supporting educator preparation programs to embed a year-long residency. And I think, what I am seeing is that more and more institutions are adopting year-long clinical experiences, which I think is incredibly important in how we prepare teachers. And what I'm really excited to see, and I think a big shift that we've seen over the last decade, is a recognition. When a number of residencies started, they weren't paid. And so I think we're seeing this recognition that they must be paid. And we're seeing school systems and state education agencies and IHEs coming together to figure out, how do we offer paid, high quality clinical experiences? And so I'm really excited to see that shift. In thinking about the shift that I hope to see over the next 10 years, I think, Ellen, I'm unfortunately a little less optimistic than you are about the shifts in terms of the way teachers are both being prepared and also what I see teachers enacting in terms of teaching kids to read. I think we still have far, I think you're in a different place with the work within your institution, but when we look nationally, I think there are still far too many programs that aren't focusing deeply on the science of reading. And so my hope is that this fundamental skill that every aspiring educator needs to learn is something that we see across the board in the next 10 years.
We ought to be sharing places we know it's going well, so we can actually spread that.
Yeah, and this is what I am excited about, is we know it's possible. We see those bright spots, Ellen, and I think, Sarah, to your point, how do we make sure that that is happening consistently across the country?
Exactly. Yeah.
Carolyn, what about you?
So to answer this question, I'm going to use a different lens. I sit on a school board in Flossmoor, and so my perspectives come from there as well. And one of the things that I think has shifted in the last 10 years is that I've seen more teachers engage in more advocacy work in a way that I hadn't before, that they are invested in really asking hard questions about what their academic leaders, their superintendents are doing and why they're doing it. And they are part of conversations around the why of what's happening in schools in more meaningful ways. And they are writing their Congress people. They're doing more in terms of advocating for the profession, which is really exciting for me to see that. And I think that's something that we're doing even in our programs, making sure that they understand that that's part of the work of being a teacher. Moving forward, I think I mentioned this before already, I'm most looking forward to leveraging partnerships in a way that we haven't before, and making sure that we're connected with teachers, superintendents, principals, as we build and redesign our programs, and making sure that our teacher preparation, our teacher induction programs match what's needed in the field.
I have so much hope as we look ahead to the next 10 years, that if we're doing the work together with folks like you, exceptional leaders, that we are going to continue to see the progress that we've made over the last decade. I can't believe we are out of time. That went so quickly. This has been so awesome. I just so tremendously appreciate all the work that you do, and the opportunity to hear from you about that work. To our listeners, if you're still here, if you made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in. And please subscribe to this podcast. We're excited to continue these conversations over the next several episodes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Val.
Thank you.
Thank you.